Okay, here we go. So I am making this video recording to go through the mix processing tricks and techniques for Audio 2. And so what we just did was import an audio file to be synced up, and we also opened the drop class project. So just as a reminder, in Finder, it downloads as drop class final 2, and then in that folder, you can open up the project file, which is the PTX file right here. Zoom in on that. And then the one thing that was missing from the project was the drop Vox file. So the actual vocal, that vocal track should now be in sync. So if I go over to Google Chrome, I did drop that into the audio files folder. So that should be downloaded. But the main thing to know is that it does need to be imported then into your project. So your project should have everything except the vocal, in which case you can go File, Import, Audio, make sure to copy that over, and make sure to grab the drop Vox file. Once you do that and copy it onto a new track, it should all be synced up. And so I'm just going to play that a little bit and try not to get too much feedback. All right, so the first thing on the sheet, if we reference our sheet, is making sure that you know adding markers and color coding. So this is something we've already gone through, so I won't have to spend much time on that. But just as a reminder, if you go down to the bottom of your mix window and double click on one of those little color bars, that's what will allow you to change the color of your tracks. So you can highlight multiple tracks, you can rearrange them. And if you wanted to, if you have a lot of tracks, you can also look into creating folders for those tracks as well. One thing I like to point out is in your UI customization, if you hit that little triangle, you can, for example, I'll have to remember where it is here. Here we go, under tracks. And you can change the contrast of the tracks as well if you really want to make sure those colors stand out to separate out your tracks. And then a reminder just for markers. First of all, I'll point out that I am in grid mode right now. And my grid, if we look up here, right about in the top middle of your screen, grid is highlighted and the note is set to quarter note is my grid value. Now, one thing I want to point out that can be a little bit confusing, and I'm even checking to make sure I'm looking at this correctly, is over here, the grid setting is for quantization. So that's for if we make any tweaks to our MIDI notes and such. But usually where we actually set our grid mode value, as it says here, so how far it snaps to the next note, is right here. So I have it set on quarter notes at the moment. And then, so if we want to, for example, let's say we want to mark where our vocal comes in, which is only about a beat into the track. So I select that. The shortcut is the enter button on the far right of your keyboard for creating a marker or memory location. And then I will say Vox enters, let's say. So whatever you want that to be. And then once I hit OK, there is my marker. Pretty straightforward, hopefully. And then if I wanted to add another marker, let's say we just want to call that one halfway. It is useful that I have grid mode on because that way my marker will be exactly on beat, which can just help with your organization. So if I hit enter again and hit midpoint, let's say, I'm just using this as an example, and then there's my marker there. So yeah, knowing whether you're in slip or grid mode, really important. All right, this might just be a halfway recording, but I'll walk through a few of these other ones. So tempo stretching your tracks. One thing that's convenient is I noticed that these are already, they should be in tempo stretch mode, but let's go over here just to make sure. So as you can see, all the tracks are in polyphonic mode at the moment. And, you know, if you wanted to, since this is electronic drums, you might want to take the mode of this one and click the little, like I call it, the upside down funnel. And maybe we want to make that rhythmic mode, potentially. It's just the algorithm that it uses to time stretch. And then I'm also double checking. Remember that second step that I so easily forget. You want to make sure your time based is, oh, hold on. I think I actually, oh no, I do want to make that ticks. Remember our time base, we want to be ticks. So that is a change you can make. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and first of all, zoom out. And you'll notice that the MIDI tracks are already in ticks, but we want all of our audio files, so the ones I currently have in blue, to be ticks. And to do that, now I don't believe it'll do it if I just highlight. I think I want to also hold Option and then click and go to ticks. And there we go. So it's a weird little quirk, but it's just important that you see that green metronome icon on every single one of these. So now let's give it a try. So I'll go ahead and play it back. So much that I can't see you. My voice shakes from the hurt that I hide. I'm concerned it wasn't feeding back. I hope it's recording my audio. And then if I want to change my tempo, oh, you know what? And I better check the vocal. That's another thing. The vocal was not turned on, so I do also want to make sure that one is in. We could do polyphonic or potentially monophonic, but let's make sure that one's set too. Otherwise, that wouldn't stretch and it'll sound weird. So if you ever have a track that sounds weird and out of sync, it's probably because that stretch mode isn't turned on. Okay, so now let's see if it works. So I'll go ahead and change my tempo to, let's say, 120, make it way faster. I should see my tracks compress, which they do, and then let's play it back. So much that I can't see you. My voice shakes from the hurt that I hide. Oh yeah, it's feeding back. We're good. I wouldn't want it that fast, but we know it works, right? We know I can time stretch. And then was I 80 before? Let's try going down to like 70. And so if everything sounds cohesive, then you can be happy that it's all time stretching properly. Oh, whoops. This must have been at 90 because that sounds slow as well. So much that I can't see you. My voice shakes from the hurt that I hide. Awesome. Yes, and so I'm deciding as we're doing this, I'm going to get halfway through these just based on me having to set this up and the length this recording's getting. So we'll at least get you halfway through. We'll pick back up on it next Tuesday. Okay, so that, stop me if you have any questions on that, but that gets us through markers and colors, kind of stuff we've talked a bit about, and then tempo stretching all tracks just as a review. Next one, tempo synced delays. So let's say, for example, well, I think, I don't know, what would you like to try a delay on? Anything that stands out to you from the tracks that we have available? There's probably two. Yeah.
Maybe try the bells.
The bells, yes. You know what? I was going to say either the bells or the vocal, I think, would sound cool with that. So, yeah, let's try it on the bells. I think, yeah, definitely, because they have kind of that, you know, they're synced up to the tempo and they have that chimey sound. Drums might get a little too busy. So here's the bells. Yeah, like a do 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 kind of thing. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm sure that sounded really beautiful on the mic. So let's go ahead. I'll do the standard mod delay. If you make noise, you're all good. I invite noisiness. Okay, a real important thing here with the delay, by default, it goes to 100% wet signal. That's going to be weird because it's going to sound out of sync. We want to dial that back probably to maybe more like 20%. We'll see. The sync button is pressed, so we know that we're in tempo. And I will turn up the feedback knob a little bit too, because the feedback is what kind of gives us multiple delays. So hopefully having this on video will help you see these steps. So let's go ahead and see how those bells sound. Once I turn up my volume. That's pretty cool. So right now we're in like, actually I'm not sure. Oh, I think I like that. So that's a quarter note delay. So you kind of get that do 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 do. But notice that is the beauty of a tempo sync delay. So as long as that sync button is pressed, then those delays are going to be right in tempo however you want them. So let's say I want longer delay. Let's make it a half note. That's cool too. Now I'm kind of torn, but maybe we'll leave it at that, turn it up a little bit, and just see how that fits. Yeah, and sometimes in the mix you won't hear it quite as much, so you might want to boost it a bit. But it's a really cool effect. So definitely something to play around with. And then I'm gonna, like I said, get us to pretty much the halfway point here for this video. So this will be part 1 of 2. But the next one I'm going to do is an automated low pass filter sweep. Now you're just going to sound cool if you know how to do that, right? So I would say like a good place to set one of these up would be on our, let's just try with our electronic drums track. So I'll highlight that. Now what do I mean by an automated low pass filter sweep? Well, like I said, if you know how to do this, you just sound like you know what you're doing. So I'll solo that up, and what I'm going to add is an EQ. I'll try to do this really fast since I'm down to about a minute. And for the purposes of what we're doing, I'm just going to do a basic 1-band EQ. We don't need any of the other bands. And like the name suggests, it is a low pass filter. So I'm going to put a low pass, which lets the lows pass. So it cuts it off on the high end. And I'm going to actually start this at a really low frequency. Okay, so going super fast since I'm pretty much out of time. Underneath the word auto, you see these 2 windows. I kind of mentioned this a while ago. It's good to have on video so you can look at what to do. That's plugin automation enable. Click that. I'm going to select frequency. So I'm dealing with frequency here. Add. Okay. So that's set up. Now, I'm going to Command plus to go back to my timeline window. And on my drums, if I click this waveform button, I can go to the bottom, and there is my frequency adjustment that I just set up. So it puts it there in that menu. So I'm going to click on frequency, and there it is, that blue line. And I'm going to go to my hand tool, and what I'm going to do is select somewhere and raise that up. And then I'll really briefly, for 2 seconds, just show you what that sounds like. So I got a little feedback there, but it starts as all low end, and then you can change the length of it to basically open that up. So it's a trick that it's done all the time, especially in electronic music. Sorry I ran out of time. So that's our halfway point. So I would say I have extra sheets too, but go ahead and hang on to your sheets, and then we'll get through the second half at the start of next class. So hopefully that gives you a good starting point, and I'll post up the video. Thank you.